It is Christmas in July, but why? Well, first, let's go back a ways. Was anybody paying attention to the hymns this morning? Were you listening to the first lesson? Did you hear the message of peace, the message of goodwill to all, the message of Messiah being born, that Savior, not just for you, not just for me, but for all? That's what Christmas is all about. Christmas is all about Jesus. And so we're celebrating Christmas in July because, unlike when we get to December, we're not going to be troubled with all those distractions. But again, why Christmas in July? Why would we pick this date? Well, let me tell you a little bit about that. Let's go through the history. First of all, let's remember that during Jesus' time, birthdays were celebrated only by royalty and powerful people. Regular people, which is what Jesus was considered, did not observe birthdays. So people like you and me, we were not afforded the luxury of celebrating our birthdays. That was only for the great and the mighty. So it's no surprise that the early church, the emerging church in the New Testament, for many years, did not celebrate the birth of Christ. Instead, they celebrated Easter. They went from the Good Friday, the crucifixion, to the resurrection on Easter. That was the main celebration. But not Christmas, not the birth of Christ. So for well over a century, it was not a tradition to celebrate the birth of Jesus. But then when Christmas begins to be celebrated by the church, what day do they pick? Not December 25th, not right away. Instead, all sorts of different days and all sorts of different months are set aside for what was then known as the Feast of Christmas. It's been written that there is no month in our calendar year to which the church authorities have not assigned Christ's birth. So why not celebrate Christmas in July? You can celebrate it any month, technically, if you go back to the early tradition of the church. Now, I suppose you're thinking, but of course, certainly in Bethlehem, that's where it all started to celebrate his birthday, or maybe at least in Jerusalem, or perhaps in Nazareth. Well, actually, some of the first evidence of the celebration of Christmas is from Egypt, right around AD 200. We hear from Clement of Alexandria, one of the patriarchs, says that Egyptians theologians placed the day of Christ's birth on that very common known day, 25 Pathon. Well, okay, it was known then. Or we may know it today as May 20th, known as the 28th year of Augustus, of Caesar, of course. They did this. They picked this particular date, believing that the 9th month in which Christ was born was the 9th of their own calendar that they had. Now, others chose the 24th or 25th of Pharmuthi. That's April 19th or 20th in our current calendar. Then we get to about the 4th century. And finally, right about then, the church begins to truly assign Christmas to December 25th across the way. However, since the ancient Julian calendar is still used by the Orthodox churches to this day, December 25th for them corresponds to us, who use the Gregorian calendar, to January 7th, or the day after Epiphany. We, Protestants, Roman Catholic churches, and the like, we use the Gregorian calendar. So we both use December 25th, but it comes on different days. So what does this mean? This means that, in effect, Christmas is celebrated on December 25th in all Christian churches. But to this day, 2,000 years later, it is celebrated on different calendar days. So for us, we celebrate it December 25th, but according to our calendar, the Orthodox churches celebrated on January 7th for the years 1900 to 2099. So even to this day, technically, the church does not celebrate Christmas on the exact same day. So why Christmas in July? Because it does not really matter which day or which calendar you choose. What matters is that you celebrate the birth of Christ. Now, what about this birth of Christ? Well, to this day, theologians still cannot agree on the actual date of Jesus' birth. Now, you've probably seen things about this. They have all kinds of calculations that alternately are based on the reign of Herod, the time of the census recorded in the New Testament, all kinds of other archaeological dates. But the actual date is still not known. So why Christmas in July? Why not? Now, in Rome, in the early 4th century, a church calendar was created. And all kinds of holy days, or we call them now holidays, but holy days were placed on certain dates. And the holiest of days were placed on what are known as solar days, or near them. So, December 25th is close to the winter solstice and is set as the birthday of Christ. And the summer solstice, which wasn't that long ago, was set for the other important character in the church life. The one that we often forget about, but you may remember from way back in December from Advent, John the Baptist, the cousin of Jesus who baptizes Christ. And obviously, the church is always thinking in these terms. They're supplemented by the equinoxes as their respective dates of conception. That's church tradition, but it's one that we don't really follow to this day, except for the December 25th part. And so we call it Christmas. And we say Merry Christmas and Merry Christmas in July. But what does Christmas mean? What about the word Christmas? I'm sure you've heard what it actually means. It is the Christ Mass. But where does that wording come from? One of the first recordings is in 1038. And Christ, of course, is from the Greek Christos. And you've been seeing as you go along with PowerPoint that it is Chi-Rho, the first two letters in Christ's name, that you see often as a church symbol. And so you get that kind of X for Christos. And then you get the Latin, Missa or Misa, the Holy Mass. You get the Christ Mass. So Christmas is really not just celebrating the birthday, but most importantly, having a Mass or a worship service to celebrate Christ. You see, despite all of the things that we pour so much of our time and energy into for Christmas, the most important thing can be found in the very word itself. A worship service with the faith family gathered to give thanks and praise to God for Christ. Now, you've also heard about Xmas. And you're probably thinking, oh, that's something that society has brought up. However, just as society seems to have taken away so much of the meaning of Christmas away from the church, so too they took away Xmas. Xmas actually comes from the church. And again, here's why. You got those letters right. In Greek, that letter Chi, the first letter of Christ, Christos. And then you have the Roman letter from the Roman alphabet that we still use to this day, also happens to be an X. So it was used as an abbreviation for Christ, and it's been doing so since the mid-16th century. And hence, Xmas has sometimes been used over the years as an abbreviation for Christmas. And just like everything else, society takes it over. Just like Christmas in July, if you haven't noticed, they've taken it over because now you go and have Christmas in July sales. But we know the reason for the season. It's right there in the Christ Mass, in the worship service for Christ. It's what we're doing right now. That's how we celebrate Christmas. That's the origin of Christmas. And we are reminded about the origin and the traditions of Christmas from some of the early ones. The ancient Christmas traditions coincide, and this should now sound a little familiar when you hear different Christmas carols and such, with the observance of Yule, the birth of the new sun god. It was believed that the Holly King died at Yule. The Holly King was the old year and the abandoned sun. And then the Oak King was born at Yule. He was the new year and growing sun. Even in Swedish, when you say Merry Christmas, it sounds a lot like the English. It says God Yule. Spelled differently, but it sounds a lot like that. So what happens is that during this whole solstice time and during these early traditions, the church sets this date. Not, as some people said, just to overtake those festivities, but actually to get the people to think more in Christian terms about that imagery. Because when you think about it with the sun and the light of Christ, this happens to coincide with Epiphany in the old days. And so this celebration of Christmas on December 25th, as it corresponds closely to the winter solstice, which means, of course, that the sun stands still. The Christmas ceremony then coincides with this feast of Epiphany and that idea of shining forth of God in human form. How many times have we talked about the light of Christ that shines forth in the darkness? The light of Christ that shines forth in all of us, or in our baptisms, as we light the candle, the light of Christ that shines forth in the young and the old alike. All that old Christmas imagery, like the Yule log, all that old imagery, like the Advent wreath with those lights, it all connects up as we celebrate the sun that shines in the darkness, this time the Son of God. The light that shines in the darkness, that light that shines as brightly as the sun. Christmas in July, when the sun shines so bright. And it's no coincidence that the church also kept in mind that this was believed to be a fulfillment, having this at this time, of the Jewish festival of lights, which Jews celebrate as Hanukkah. Because, of course, the church starts out mostly with those Jewish men and women, and then the Gentiles as well. And so, this is why we celebrate Christmas in July. Once we know the history, once we know the real tradition of Christmas, then we get to know what we really focus on. The fact that it does not matter which actual day Jesus was born. The most important thing is that Jesus was born. Born for this. Born for you and me. Born to bring God's grace and peace and goodwill to all. Born to bring saving grace. That's how we celebrate the birth of Christ. Whether it's today, July 23rd, celebrating Christmas in July, whether it's December 25th, whether it's December 24th, or whether it's any other day of the year, we celebrate Christmas any day because we celebrate the birth of Christ. Because we know what that means. The birth leads to Easter and resurrection. The promise fulfilled. So today we celebrate Christmas in July. And we're able to do so in a way that helps us. Now, I know, besides the kids, some of you are disappointed that we did not bring presents for everybody. And I have no presents for you out there. But you already have the greatest present you could ever ask for. The birth of Jesus. That's the only present that matters. And as you've heard before in many sermons, that's the only reason we get to exchange presents. Because of the true Christmas present. So now we don't have to worry about those things and getting the perfect Christmas present and how much you spend on this one and that one and no fighting. At least I hope not on Christmas in July. And I dare say that nobody is worried about, or at least think at this time, now, did I put the roast in for the Christmas dinner? Did I actually turn the oven on? I think my Christmas cookies were a little burnt. By the way, the Christmas cookies are not burnt out there. Good job, everybody. Or, how many Christmas parties do I need to get to from friends? Or how many families do I have to meet over the Christmas holidays? I gotta get that ladder out, I gotta put those lights up, I gotta get the Christmas tree up, oh, then we gotta get all the decorations up, we have to do this, that, and everything. And then there's the stress with friends and relatives. Christmas in July, we put all of that aside so we can actually celebrate Christmas. That we can focus on the reason for the season. A Messiah born with peace and goodwill to all. So may you celebrate the birth of Jesus in your heart and soul today and every day. For Christ was born for this. Merry Christmas to all, and to all days may it be a Merry Christmas. Yes, it shall be so, for that is, from the Hebrew, Amen to all. Merry Christmas.